Hey everybody, I thought I would make a video from a place that you can see the beehives. These are my home temple beehives and they're wonderful. So maybe you can even see the bees going in and out, I'm not sure. Wanted to talk with you today about this thing. It sounds oversimplified to say that it's the one thing that you need to know in order to get out of really destructive stress and fear cycles, right? And yet, the thing about stress, anxiety, fear cycles is that the hallmark of them is that they are too complex. They give rise to more and more complexity. And what we need is a simple way through, right? So I'm going to offer this to you. We're just starting this. I do a body reset every spring and fall. And we work with a nutritional protocol. I'll put the links below. You're definitely welcome to join. It's pretty awesome because we work with a nutritional protocol, and then we also work with these modules that I created that are all about shifting the body, the being, your mind, all of you, from catabolic to anabolic. So all of the alkalinizing and anti-inflammatory nutritional protocol we work with is doing that for the body, shifting it to a building state rather than a breaking down state. And then with these modules, right, we're working with the neurology, de-escalating the nervous system, emotional balance, and everything, all the other aspects of our being, to do the same in those, to bring our entire beings from a state of catabolic breaking down, a stress state, to an anabolic state, which is the state of building. And so what I wanted to talk to you about today is one of the things that we work with most intensively in different ways throughout those modules, which is how to do that, how to get out of the stress state into the anabolic state, how to get out of breaking down into building up and stay there. And what I wanted to offer you from that we talk about in one of the early modules, is the extremely important need to know what your stress state is. So basically, especially now, right, especially given the general climate of fear, the general climate of contention, the general reality of how much is out of our control, right? Many people, more than ever, are living in a stress state, in a flight state, in a fight state, right? In an activated, escalated state, right? And in that state, all that is created is more of that state, right? It's a state that breaks things down. That's the nature of it. It's a catabolic state, right? Particularly when we're living in it for an extended period of time. So shifting into an anabolic state is the key, right? At the most fundamental level, in a very simplified way, it is the key to actually getting ourselves out of these hypervigilant, kind of endless stress and fear cycles that break the body down, break the psyche down, and then perpetuate themselves. So I wanted to talk to you about the stress state. So here's the way that, we work with everything in her mystery school, and in general, we work with everything from what I call deep feminine perspective, but it has to do with really looking at what is rather than what's being said. How can we simplify things? Because we can. One of the things that we're most struggling with in our times is mental complexity and overcomplexity and excess of all kinds. And so again and again, we want to bring things down to, all right, like, yes, life is complex. Yes, obviously there's a lot of nuance, there are all these things, and there are simple guidelines. There are simple ways to navigate through those complexities, right? So it's not that we're trying to make all these complexities go away or make them become more simple or control them. The point is, if you're feeling stressed or if you're feeling afraid, probably that's because you're facing things, many things, maybe big things that are on many levels out of your control, right? So we're not trying to change that. That's just the way that it is. We're trying to identify how to simply navigate through these complexities and how to identify what it is that we do have influence over. Where is personal power? It's not in the places of all the things we can't control. But that doesn't mean that we are at the mercy of all things, right? So identifying your stress state is kind of, for me, one of the most important things to do in general, but especially now, right? And what that means is, instead of knowing all the things that stress you out, instead of all the time you spend kind of talking about it, conversing about it, identifying it, researching it, all these things about the things that stress you out, and seeing it over and over and over again, we're looking instead of at the things that stress you out, the things that create fear, the things that create overwhelm. We're shifting focus from those things to the state itself. So, as a reclamation of intimacy with yourself. So if you start to understand what your stress state is, then all of a sudden you can start to know how it is that you can address and take care of yourself when you're in a stress state. So you're not distracted or putting all your energy and all your focus on the things that you can't control. You're bringing it home, starting to identify and know yourself well enough to know that you are simply in a stress state, right? In a stress state, everything will be very complex. You'll feel very dispersed. You'll feel very threatened often. You will you won't have answers. You'll become myopic. You know, I've done some work with Dr. Joe Dispenza over the past couple of months, and one of the things, and he articulates so much so beautifully, but one of them is that when you're in a stressed state, when you're in that state where essentially you're in fight or flight and you get stuck there, which is where a lot of us are, the literal neurological and state of being is a myopically focused one. You hone in on the thing that is wrong, the thing that doesn't feel right, the thing that you know is bad, right? Because this is a survival state, and the survival state needs you to look at the thing so that so that you get out, you fight it, or you get away, or whatever it is. However, what's happening is that we're living in that state, and that's what breaks us down, right? It's not a bad state. It is a state of survival. However, if you live in the state of survival like that, you actually break down. So instead of thriving, you start to break down more and more. So basically, when we're in a stressed state, which much of the culture, much of the media, much of life, much of just everything that's happening is kind of perpetuating that state. When you stay there, what's going to happen, and what you'll notice, is that you can't see anything but what's wrong. And it starts to look bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So shifting out of the stress state is what will give you it'll give you access to a new idea, a solution, an action to take, right? It'll give you access to stillness. It'll give you access to inner resource. You won't have that when you're in a stressed state. And what I mean by identifying what your stress state is to really start to watch that, and to just inventory the past. You've lived some time now, right? Life is constantly changing, and if you look, you can start to see that when in the face of a stressful situation, when you're upset, when something is out of your control, when when you're navigating a hardship, whatever it is, navigating the stresses of life, you can start to see what your go-to state is. We all have it. Your stress state. How does it feel in your body? Will you start to notice that your chest gets really tight, or that your mind gets fast, your thoughts get really fast, and there's a compression, you feel compressed, right? And that you start to, I'm kind of describing mine, right? You'll have your own. Some of us will go into this more kind of collapsed place, right? Others of us go into this hypervigilant, kind of hyperactive place, right? But you want to start to be able to see that so that you can start to identify in yourself just simply when you're entering your stress state, that it's your state. Because when you can make it simply that, okay, wait, I know that I think all these things are wrong. I know that all these things are troubling me. I know that I'm afraid for all these reasons or whatever it is. I know that I'm pissed for all these reasons. But I just don't feel good and I don't know why. What you can do is start to notice, instead of all of that, you can just start to simplify, bring it down and just recognize, oh, okay. What's for sure is that I'm in that place that I go. I have lost a certain amount of center, right? And how I know, it's not because all these things are scaring me and not because I'm bent out of shape about this experience or this interaction I just had. It's because my mind is spinning, my heart is tight, I can't, all my thoughts are negative, right? I feel threatened or I feel threatening. So you start to notice where you go. And in that intimacy with yourself, what will happen is then all of a sudden you'll start to get up on the horse rather than be trampled underneath the legs of this horse. Meaning, instead of having this state that just takes over every time something comes up, and every time you watch another this or that on the news, or every time you have this interaction, you can start to recognize that it's not those things. Those things don't give or take your sovereignty away, right? That's not where it is. Where it is here. And when you start to recognize that you're in that state again, your state, your stress state, what you can also do is start to more and more be connected to the part of you that can witness that and just open even the littlest bit of space around it so that you can move out of it. And every time you do that, you're going to feel, well, in that moment, you're going to feel relief. You're going to start to feel empowered, and you're going to start to earn your own trust. You're going to start to earn the trust in yourself that all the things you can't control and all the things that you're going to have to navigate, at least you're not going to be out of control in here. At least there's not going to be this just roaring anxiety or this intensity of aggression or whatever it is that is your form of stress state that you can't really stop, and that is just habitual, and that, if you pay attention, is breaking your life and your body down, right? We don't want to, as much as possible, we don't want to be breaking down. We need to be resourced. Our world needs us. Our people need us, right? We want to be in that place where, for ourselves, yes, we have some peace and we have a sense of where and how to go, but also that we're not participating in the breakdown. We've made the shift. What that shift is a shift to an anabolic state, right? A building state. So I hope that's making some sense, that invitation. And basically what I would invite you to, in terms of kind of what to do, the invitation here is to just take a moment and inventory. You could do it even this moment. What is your stress state? You know what it is. I mean, I'll tell you mine. I just had a massive meltdown 2 days ago, right? And what it is that it's just, I'm spinning. I can't, all my thoughts are hopeless, right? There's a real, I feel completely disconnected from the good, and that doesn't mean I'm disconnected from the fantasy. I'm just disconnected from any resource, right? And I feel alone. I could describe that to you. I could tell you that my heart compresses, my head gets really tight. I've had to spend a lot of time getting to know my stress state because it's a strong one. Most of us have pretty intense stress states. Side note, I can't really self-medicate. It hasn't been a thing for me. I've never been able to really drink. I've never been able to smoke pot. There's not really anything that I can do other than meditate, etc., to take the edge off. So there's been this kind of unavoidable, necessary, I can't even escape this. I can't even take the edge off. I'm going to have to address this. So I've just spent a lot of time with my stress state. Point is, though, once you know what it is, and you give that to yourself, name it, be I see you, I know you, okay? Because then when it comes up and when you see that you're in it, instead of staying in it and trying to find solutions from that place, taking action from that place, speaking words from that place, you can notice, oh, this is the state that I'm in right now. This is a stress state. This is my catabolic state. And in that state, I already know that nothing that I think in this place, nothing that I do from this place is going to be complete, because I am not resourced and I know what state I'm in. So we choose in that moment, which can be a really difficult choice to make, but we choose in that moment to stop and basically to say, look, in this moment, it's not for me to have this conversation. It's not for me to take this action. It's not for me to try to fix it. It's for me to stop, do what I need to do to get myself out of this state, and then return. Then return to this conversation. Then return to this question, this trouble, this hardship, right? And, that doesn't mean some big retreat off somewhere. That just means like, okay, what can I do? How can I pull back in? How can I take a moment to tend to this state so that I have something else, something that isn't destructive, ultimately, something that isn't participating in the breakdown to bring to this situation. And you want to know your stress state, and then you want to know your anabolic state, and you want to know the simple ways that you can get there. So look, what works for me is I have to stop and leave. Like, now I get in my van. This is a new thing. I get in my van, I drive out, I park somewhere that has at least a little bit of some kind of expansion, some kind of view, and I just sit there. I don't have my phone. I don't have my computer. I just sit there and I let myself settle. I park myself in front of something of beauty. And that means if you're in the city or if you're in somewhere where there isn't nature, then you light a candle and you sit in front of that, right? You find an image, you find a color that you love, you find a fragrance, like in that small, whatever space you have, you locate yourself in front of something of beauty, something that you love, from the place of like, I love this. It delights me. It's not an effort to feel nourished or at least slightly comforted by this thing, whatever it is, and settle. For some of you, it might be, I go on a walk, or I journal, or you have to know what it is, and you probably do know what it is if you really check in. But we do what is necessary then, and then we return. And if you also know what your anabolic state is, you can kind of know what you're headed towards. There's a certain way in which you need to know too, well, what is your anabolic state? What does it feel like to you when you are resourced again, when you are closer to center, when you are kind of not in this literal, physiological survival state where everyone is your enemy? Everything is your enemy, and everything's going bad, and everything's going bad to worse, and all of the things. The anabolic state is a state of everything's not better. You're not analyzing anymore, though. You're not trying to fix it. You're not stuck there in the place where the answers don't come from anywhere. You're okay. All those things are the situation is still here, all these things, but my state of being inside of it has shifted. My heart is softer. My mind has quieted. It's more focused at the same time that it's more spacious, right? That is the state, physiologically, of moving out of a stress state, is that the mind is actually then able to focus because it's holding more space. It's spacious. Your attention will be able to take in more information, especially information and resource that comes from outside of the situation. So that's my kind of offering. We work with it. You are welcome to join. We're working with Spirit Body Rises is the reset that we're doing. It's kind of this body spirit reset to being resilient. And this is kind of the core concept there is, will you take the time? Will you do what is necessary to shift your being from catabolic to anabolic for yourself and for your world? And will you give yourself the mercy of a simple navigational tool in the middle of all this complexity. If you let it be simple on this level, am I breaking down? Am I in a stress state or not? How do I know? Because I know what my stress state feels like. All right, then I'm going to tend to that in whatever way I can. And what I will say is that this isn't about, it'll be tricky, because when you're in a stressed state and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, now I'm in a stress state. I got to get out of the stress state. Oh no, I'm breaking down. Oh no, that's even worse. Now what can I do? When I say come out of the whole state, that means you kind of come out of it entirely, and you come out of that whole thing. And the way to do it is not by fighting it, it's just by recognizing awareness, right? A certain amount of witness and awareness around that, and then moving even the littlest bit toward what is outside of that, you know? It's not like all of a sudden you have to get completely relaxed inside of everything or resolve everything all at once. It's just about shifting your state even the littlest bit. Because once you kind of tilt the momentum in that direction, you start a different movement, right? And you give your being, you start to earn your own trust more and more. That within what you can control, within what is yours in any given moment to actually apply your will force to, what you can really do, right? That you've done the thing that is wise. You've done the thing that shifts your being so that you become more of the good, right? In your own being, and then to the world around you. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking about today, and it's because I'm thinking so much about all of you, and because I'm aware of my own navigation of just the, what seems like a perpetual escalation. I've been watching it happen for a few, years now, right? This escalation of intensity, contention, of just the mainlining of fear and the mainlining of really of all sorts of messaging that is intended to keep you in a stress state, and the intensifying uncertainty and this the speed, the amplitude with which things are changing, right? So how we navigate the stress state, the survival state, is going to determine a lot for us individually and as a whole, right? Are we going to break down? Are we going to break each other down? Are we going to lift each other up? Are we going to be brothers and sisters? No matter what, are we going to figure that out? Or are we going to destroy each other, right? And it comes down to this, right? Know yourself, know thyself. It's never been any different throughout any of the traditions. Go ahead and look, know thyself, and you will know God. Know thyself, and you'll find the way, right? Here is where the guidance through these times will come from. And part of knowing ourselves is to know these things about ourselves. Where do we go off? Where do we start breaking ourselves and others down? Where do we lose ourselves in survival? Understandably, but what can we do about it, right? And if we make it simple, there is always something we can do. Even though it won't fix everything, don't ask it to do that. That's not what we get. We get this. We get a soul-forging journey where we learn how to rise up inside of everything that's going on. So much love to all of you. Blessed be.